I face 3 years in prison because I simply push a like on X platform. Even a pile of shit, this is an art for them. We will face prison if we would like to explain why there is, for instance, two genders. We, as conservative politicians, cannot convey in the social media our message about migrants because then we can go to jail. They are talking about the freedom and about the human rights, but they hate us. We have 1,000 years experience fighting for freedom. I believe that it was very important point on conservative map to gathering all right-wing movement around the world and try to find the pillars to get a big win in the future, like the President Trump did in the United States for us. I think that first of all we should know what the European Union is now. And a good example of this you can find, the best example of this you can find in the new treaties which they prepared previous term of the European Parliament. And in the first point of this treaty you can find the reference to manifesto from Ventotene, which is communist manifesto. And this is the real spirit of the nowadays of the European Union. And we would like to fight for real freedom, political freedom, freedom of speech. And it's really difficult to imagine that we need to face in the European Union this communist idea. I will quote you something, because when we are talking about the communism, we should know that the creator of communism, Karl Marx, once said, I quote you, "The condition for removing the alienation that makes men unhappy is the abolition of religious, family, state, law, morality, science, and art." And why this is important? Because from my perspective, I think that man can only be free when he has a set of tools which give him a power to distinguish good and evil, true manipulation. And if the European Union nowadays refuse all Western civilization, for us, they would like to, from our perspective, they create the people without this Western civilization background, which could be really easy manipulated by leftist media. We would like to back to our roots and fight for this Western civilization. Without this, I don't think that we can achieve real freedom. And I will give you an example of this. Why I'm telling you about the Western civilization, art, morality, law, and so on. I will give you an example. The leftists try to present art. This is a real thing. Even the pile of shit, this is an art for them. And try to compare this, for instance, the Van Gogh painting, when he described the human nature using the light of nature, or for instance Chopin music, where, for instance, famous revolutionary etude, where he convey the real sadness and angry because something which he loves fall. So Poland, after the November uprising, falls, and you can find in his music, greatest music. So I believe that if the European Union with this communist manifesto refuse all Western civilization achievement, we cannot build anything which give us the path to compare with the United States or China, because this is a false spirit, and I don't think this is a real freedom.
So from your perspective, the left are leaning more and more communist, as you gave the example of it, but in the global perspective, the protection of human rights is always very important. The protection of individual freedoms is very important, but for all, across all demographics and sectors. How do you reconcile with the center groups, the people in the middle that want to support a lot of the initiatives that you guys have, but are facing friction, specifically in regards to some harder stances that the right in Europe have taken against, for example, marriage, against even abortion, honestly. Trump has done a very interesting job in the way that he's able to soften some of the stances in the US, and that has enabled him to garner the support of even former Democrats like Elon Musk or Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr. How does the EU on the right reach the middle ground in order to create a coalition, but also to be able to become the majority?
We should think about the language and proper agenda. And of course, when you mentioned about the human rights, for us is also very important. You know, in the European Union, you can find the language that they are for them the most important thing is diversity, toleration. But if you dig deeper, you will find the proof that they really don't like any thoughts which is different than they should be from the leftist perspective. And this is the task for us, to explain people that okay, you would like to support forces which like freedom, but what the leftist presents in the European Union is not a really freedom. I can give you an example. They create something like cordon sanitary in the European Union. So there is some big groups which they cannot achieve any position in the European Union. So they are talking about the diversity, but in the fact they are doing opposite.
Right. To give an example, it's similar to affirmative action in the States, where they're forcing a percentage. Can you explain exactly, like, because a lot of Americans aren't familiar with the intricacies of that, of the solidarity, my French is not very good, of that particular policy that they're going after? Because I know that it's been compared to affirmative action in the States that was very unpopular, and it's caused a lot of discrimination on the other side. So if you could talk maybe kind of how that's similar or not in the EU?
In EU, I think that it's even worse. You know, we cannot achieve any important position, even though we have more support from citizens than the sum of the leftist party, which they achieve a very important position in the European Union. So this is the first thing. Second thing, lots of us facing a prosecution because we are talking, for instance, about migration. I face 3 years in prison now in a special trial in Poland because I simply push a like on X platform in the movie which describe the real scenes of violence of migrants. So now I have trial. So they are talking about the freedom and about the human rights, but the fact they hate us. They hate this. So our task is to explain the European citizens that you can say whatever you want, but you should looking into politicians' acts, real acts.
So from your perspective, I'm curious, like maybe we can delve a little bit more into Poland and their crackdown on social media specifically. I know you're facing it. Is this a very common incident? This is happening in the UK. It's happening in France. It's happening all over the world. And it was happening even in the US before Trump came into the office. Like you said specifically that you liked a particular documentary, and that documentary then, by liking it on X, you're now facing potentially up to 2 years in jail. what what law is that part of the DSA law? What law specifically is this involved in, and how is this happening, and is it happening to more people than just you?
Yes, of course. It's lots of politicians in Poland facing the same charges, and this is according to hate speech law. So they says that if I push like on the Twitter about the migrant violence, which was the true sin, the documentary sin, this is the hate speech. So that's why I should go to jail. And lots of people in Poland have exactly the same experience. You can find in Poland this real scene when one of the men which tried to defend the human life, presenting the human life, he was beaten, and he recorded in his own car, and then the leftist judges rules that nothing happened. So they presenting the word that I cannot. So we as conservative politicians cannot convey in the social media our message about migrants, because then we can go to jail. We cannot defend life, so we cannot use argument. This is regarding your question about the abortion. So we can simply be beaten on the street, and they have a defend from the state, from the legal perspective. In the European Union is worse than in the United States was, even under democratic rules ruling.
So how hate speech, it's become quite the label. We literally, if you look at somebody funny, that could be hate speech at this point, it seems like. So memes, I'm assuming, are banned in Poland. You've got, the UK, and the crackdown there has been very strongly covered across all platforms. Like Elon's talked about it. Tommy Robinson is in jail right now because of it. There's a lot of people that have been arrested after the protests that happened because of social media posts. Are you seeing that trajectory going to be happening in Poland as well? Is there going to be a protest uprising and then a backlash to try and reel in some of this? Because I talked to a lot of politicians here, and many of them can't really tell me exactly what the definition of hate speech is at the end of the day.
So simply definition of hate speech from the leftist perspective is you can only says what we like. So this is the simple definition of the hate speech. So for them, hate speech is when you try to present real scenes of violence from migration, when you try to defend the life, when you are against abortion, this is also a hate speech. When you, of course, against the LGBT or gender ideology, this is also under the hate speech law protection.
But even if it's just an argument, or it's not, doesn't have to be an attack or anything. If it's just documentation or even your own opinion.
Yeah. So it could be under the hate speech protection, and you can go to jail.
So what type of legislation are they trying to push through, do you believe? Like, what is it? It's the DSA one, or no? That one's already in place. So is it the AI now one?
The most important, I think, the biggest danger is about hate speech.
Right.
Hate speech. They try to, because we have in some states create their own bills about their own law about the hate speech. But now the European Union try to force the legislative, which be imposed to all the European Union countries with the European Union elite standards, like I described to you. If you try to compare what they would like to describe like a hate speech, it will be almost our agenda. So,
wow.
So we will face prison if we would like to explain why there is, for instance, two genders. So why is, for instance, illegal migration bad? Why the European, the creation of European state, it's against freedom and against diversity at all. So, however, we will fight. We will fight because we know that we are fighting for something bigger, so something bigger than only our personal freedom. We are fighting for citizens, for our citizens. Because I can tell you from the Poland perspective, for us, we have 1,000 years experience of fighting for freedom. Today, this year we marked 1,000 years of Polish kingdom. And if you follow our history, there will always powers which try to take over our freedom. Sometimes it was Russia, sometimes it was Germany, sometimes others, but we always face it. And that's why I think that from Poland you can hear maybe the most important protest about this.
When are they planning on passing the hate speech bill?
They're
legislation?
working on. They still working on this, even though this is not the European Union competence. This is only the state competence. So we have a very difficult system in the European Union that some competence are in the states, some competence are in the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
And now we face not a fight because the European Union would like to create states and take over size or all competence from the states.
From your perspective, just to play devil's advocate, there are some groups that have been persecuted and targeted online specifically. I know on both sides of the Palestinian war, there's been targets and hate speech going back and forth there. You've got the LGBTQ community. Even conservatives have faced hate speech. Should the government step in and protect these people, or should we let people say what they're going to say as long as it doesn't escalate to violence or actions?
So I think that the European Union should back to our roots and to Voltaire when he said that I don't agree with you. Voltaire said, I don't agree with you. However, I will fight that you can say whatever you want. So I think that it should be a foundation of the European Union. We should be careful every time when we are talking about the freedom, and we try to use especially criminal code about the freedom. However, I understand that the freedom, regarding to your question, is not a absolute law. It should be a civil path to fight for this. But I don't think that the prison is the best solution every time when we are talking about the freedom of speech. And that's why I think that the European Union should refuse the communist roots.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.